is Nicolas Aramayo. I use they, them pronouns, and I graduated from Yale College in 2017 with a degree in women's gender and sexuality studies, and as a part of the multidisciplinary academic program in human rights. I am a first-generation student from a low-income household. I was raised by an undocumented single parent, and despite all of those things that were definitely stacked against me systemically, I was able to get to Yale through just a combination of things, right? I put in a lot of work into school and things like that, but ultimately, I do have to give big props to the county that I was from growing up, because it had a very, very robust public education infrastructure that allowed me to access a lot of resources that, we didn't have money for, but that thankfully we were able to get through other means, through like the school, through donations, through like other forms of charity. And it's interesting because I feel like that experience that I had growing up in like my specific county, where it was kind of like there was an abundance of resources available, but they were only as accessible as long as like I knew how to access them, I think about my time at Yale and how like one of the things that I definitely felt a lot while at Yale, and also feel a lot now looking back, is that I was truly surrounded by so many resources, both like financially and in terms of just like opportunities. And even now, like there are moments when I look back and I'm just like, man, like I wish I had known to take more advantage of like, this scholarship or this fellowship or this funding. There sometimes like I think about it like that feeling that you get when maybe you look at like a job or like an application for something, and you're getting really excited about it, but then you look at the deadline and the deadline was like yesterday or was a few days ago, and so you just missed it. And if maybe you had just a little bit more information, you would have been able to make it. So I feel like that a lot of times about my time at Yale, where it was just like, I just did not have access to the information that I needed to take full advantage of everything. I didn't have like family members or parents who could guide me through, how to navigate the resources at like an Ivy League school, right? And I like similarly, like a lot of the people that I connected with while at Yale, and felt like, like a very close connection to, were other people like me, right? Who were also struggling to navigate this space, and like struggling to figure out like if they were doing enough, if they were looking for like enough opportunities, if they were applying to enough things. So I definitely, saw that parallel in like both of my educational experiences. And I just feel like when I think about my time at Yale, I definitely see the community that I was a part of and I helped build with Trans at Yale as like a really, really big hallmark of that time. I started socially transitioning in my sophomore year, and it was a very, very public transition, which I did intentionally because, when I was starting to think about my gender identity, one of the things that like for me was lacking was I was like, I don't necessarily know who to talk to about this, like in terms of like my friends or my colleagues or like professors. And for me, I was just like, when I started identifying as trans, I was like, I know I'm not the only trans person on campus, but I was like, why don't I know anyone else? Like, why isn't there a dedicated like space or community for like undergrads to go to, or to like commune with one another over this experience, right? And so I decided at the end of my sophomore year, going into my junior year, that I wanted to start something called In the Closet, which was supposed to be like a clothing exchange for trans and non-binary and like gender non-conforming people, so that one, it would give us the opportunity to share and exchange resources in the form of clothing, something that can be very stressful, can be incredibly personal, for a lot of like trans folks, just like having to deal with like shopping for clothing, dealing with the tension and stress of being in like gendered sections in clothing stores and stuff like that. So, it had kind of this multi-purpose of just like giving people access to free resources and also allowing us to like meet one another and, just commune together. And so, bit by bit, over like the course of like 2 years, like the event started with like maybe 2 or 3 people showing up to like eventually we had like 10 people and we would have like food and stuff, right? And so it was through doing that, through meeting other trans people that we were able to build this community that that focused on just getting resources like out to one another, right? Like really helping one another navigate Yale as an academic institution, Yale Health as like a medical institution that oftentimes provided care to like like us as trans students. And so, for example, like for me, as I was going through my medical transition, like having kind of this community allowed me to, share any information that I got or share from my own experience, just going through the Yale Health system, what it was like to deal with that as a trans person. It also just gave us a collective of people with whom we could advocate together, when we needed to talk to providers at Yale Health for things that we really, really needed. And so sometimes when I think about like the impact that like Yale had on my life, it's not necessarily Yale as an academic institution, but like Yale as just like the place that allowed me to connect with other people and like build community with them. And so when I think about the work that I'm doing now, I'm currently working as a paralegal at the ACLU with the Human Rights Program. We do a lot of really good work. We do a lot of really good and important work, both on the national and international level. But for me, like right now, what I feel is the greatest impact that I feel from my work and that I feel like I am giving to my work is just that continually building community with other trans and non-binary people and making sure that we are working to make the ACLU as our workplace internally a good place for us to be, and also externally making sure that the messages that the ACLU puts forth are messages that are acknowledging and in support of trans and non-binary people, right? And making sure that those issues are prioritized. But yeah, so I feel like when we're talking about issues of like equity and diversity and inclusion, the most important thing in my mind is that we exist in spaces that allow us to build community, because when we are advocating for the things that we care about, we can't do it alone, right? We need to build community around us and organize with other people to actually be able to advocate for the things we care about. And I think that is definitely something that I had the opportunity to learn at Yale, and I'm very grateful for.